I don't even know why I'm making this video other than that I can make this video. But let's talk a little bit about Shakespeare in school. I think most English speaking people have learned Shakespeare. It's sort of the English speaker equivalent to Italians learning Dante's Divine Comedy in high school. It's sort of your introduction to English literature, and also Shakespeare is just important to understanding English speaking culture. So many English phrases are from Shakespeare, so many like sort of English memes, I guess you would say. So it's a pretty big deal, but I find that most people don't like Shakespeare, and it is the fault, partially, of the way that Shakespeare is taught in schools. I think the biggest problem is they will assign Shakespeare, but don't teach the students Shakespearean English, which is not Old English, it's actually Middle English. No, early modern English. It's early modern English. And most of these students cannot understand the text, but they don't provide the kids a translation, or sometimes even demonize using them. So then they don't understand anything. And they're not going to be able to analyze it, and it just becomes frustrating because you're trying to analyze a text where some of the words are just fundamentally different, and sometimes can give you a fundamental misunderstanding of the text. For example, when Juliet says, "Romeo, Romeo, wherefore art thou Romeo?" A lot of people think that she's saying, "Where are you, Romeo?" Because "where" means where, like in "where are you?" And they don't understand what "wherefore" means, which is a completely different word. And then you tell someone to analyze that. They're going to give you something that is probably not Shakespeare's intentions. So, without an understanding of the language, there is basically no point in teaching Shakespeare, because they're not going to understand anything. They're not going to understand anything, and it's just useless. Secondly, Shakespeare is often taught via reading as if it was a novel and not a play. And that's not really helpful because they're not novels. They're meant for a completely different audience. They're meant to be watched, they're meant to be seen, they're meant to be played by actors. Of course, I don't expect every single school to be able to, play Shakespeare or bring their students to a Shakespearean play, but there are versions available free on the internet. And I'm not sure if you can get access. Honestly, it's really difficult. The BBC Shakespeare is so expensive, but it has every single recognized Shakespeare play, and it's a pretty good resource, but it's so expensive. It costs like $100 or something for the full box set. And weren't those like VHS tapes? I'm not even sure if they have them on DVD. Oh, I think they have them on DVD. But case in point, it is easier to understand, even if you don't teach them Shakespeare in English. It's easier to understand when you can see the body language of the actors. There's a little bit more context, right? Than if you were to do it, just reading. Sometimes you can't really gauge the stage directions, or if a scene is supposed to be funny or if it's supposed to be serious, and that can be a detriment for students who are trying to learn Shakespeare. And using the rule of three, thirdly, they don't teach enough, they don't encourage enough the students to analyze Shakespeare in their own cultural context, while also teaching Shakespeare's cultural context. I think this is sort of changing now, but Shakespeare lives in a completely different time. Yet Shakespeare persists in a completely different time. we are still using his words. We are still making movies based off of his plots. He's the most quoted English author ever. But I don't think teachers allow their kids enough freedom to analyze Shakespeare as they understand it. And that's a huge problem in general. I mean, talking about media literacy, you know that meme where it's like, sometimes the curtains are just blue, basically saying in English classes, oftentimes you have to analyze the symbolism in a text, and oftentimes the way they do that is through talking about color symbolism. For example, last year I was reading The Great Gatsby for school, and they were talking about the color green and the color white and what they mean in the context of the story, which is absolutely correct. But a lot of kids sort of struggle with this sort of symbolism thing, right? And a lot of them think that the teachers are going a little bit too far with their symbolic analysis, right? And so it led a lot of people to say, sometimes the curtains are just blue. Maybe it doesn't mean that the person is sad. Maybe the author just wanted the curtains to be blue, which is true. Sometimes the author doesn't mean anything special or symbolic. However, I think this is a sign about that a lot of teachers don't teach kids how to extrapolate on a text that ends up sort of backfiring on the teachers, because then after, when they're trying to make their kids elaborate, the kids don't want to because they don't understand it in their head. They just think that the teacher is making stuff up. And when the kid does analyze it and comes to a different conclusion than the teacher, they're graded down for it. And don't get me wrong, there are some like obvious symbolism. Like, for example, Narnia is obviously using Christian imagery in the story. If you can't pick that out, then yes, that's not a good thing. However, if someone comes up with an understanding that is a little bit different, I don't think that they should be graded down severely or told that they're wrong. I think it makes kids less interested in analyzing it because their teachers don't really encourage them to think outside of the box. It sort of stifles that part of their brain that would make them realize that the curtains aren't just blue, that the wallpaper isn't just yellow, But constantly telling kids that no, that's not what that means is cutting off that development that should allow them to be able to analyze a Shakespeare text. And that's all I really have to say. And it is sort of a rant, low-key, because I wasn't very good at English for the majority of my schooling years. It's really this last year that I've gotten a hold of it, and that I'm not getting an 80%, which is not a bad score. That's fine. But I've always wanted to get an A in English. And the first time I had to start writing for English and not just doing, grammar, I really struggled because I could analyze a text, but I wasn't really good at writing it down, like elaborating, extrapolating on it. And oftentimes I felt like the teachers were just saying the way the conclusion you came to was wrong. So according to who? They didn't really teach me that it's the method I hadn't really caught on to. And I think that discourages a lot of people. And I'm not a naturally talented writer. It's just not my thing necessarily. I've been trying to write books since I was 5 years old, and it's never gotten anywhere. But I think that's why a lot of people just sort of drop it, because they don't think that they will ever be good at it. They think that it's too subjective. And that was a big problem with me for English. I just felt it was too subjective and that I couldn't get anywhere with it. There is a method to the madness. It's not completely, it's not pseudoscience, it's art. It's a completely different thing, you know? Anyway, that was just it. And I used Shakespeare because Shakespeare was an author that I really enjoyed during that time where I was not good at anything English, really. But I enjoyed reading. I just didn't really know how to do it in the school method, and I think that there are ways for schools to do a better job. But I'm not trying to offer solutions. I'm just talking about the problem. This isn't a problem solution essay. I'm just ranting for no reason. Anyway, that's all. I don't even know why I did this. Actually, I know why I did this, but anyway, that's all. I accidentally clicked the pause button.